how these spot tails are getting around on the landscape. So here our researchers snapped a picture of spot tails using mud cracks. Again, it kind of gives you a sense of, all right, so in this case, we're in a dry year, and here is yet another challenge to finding this species reliably. If it's not hiding under a rock, if you didn't miss a lump of grass, well, now did you miss the mud cracks and small spaces where they might be trying to hide? So habitat comes up again and again, and that's not going to change, and that's something that we wanted to be prepared for. So in 2018, we partnered with Texas Tech University to create a fine-scale grassland map. The products of this work, which are going to be due in 2022, it'll apply to our understanding of spot tail, but even sort of support like a longer term vision into these same grassland communities. So they've got graduate students looking for lizards as well as, kind of characterizing grass communities in these areas. The products of this research should be, a better understanding of the condition and extent of grasslands as they pertain to spot tail and beyond. And that'll include things like fragmentation or connectivity, and kind of ties us back to some of these early discussion of general threats on the landscape. So kind of where does that leave us? Well, everything we've funded and all the research that has been conducted by this, diverse and pretty talented team over the last 6+ years is, hopefully going to directly contribute to the SSA. The SSA, the species status assessment, say that 6 times fast, it is sort of the scientific body that will hold hands and accompany the other policy decisions that go into a real Endangered Species Act listing decision. And so the bare bones of this SSA sort of show up here on this graphic on the right. And what we're really trying to do is kind of show you where this life history information, the genetics, the diet, the habitat associations, funnel into defining species need. What is the species? What does it eat? Where does it live? What is a population? And then the service, through a combination of collecting these reports and other literature available, talking to the experts, and then doing some in-house analysis, will be able to define sort of how the species is doing now, like this snapshot of the science in time. In their in-house analysis, they'll have to look at patterns and trends that have kind of gotten the species up till this point and talk about those in the same document kind of into the future. The service will kick off this SSA in the fall. They usually take about a year to put all this information together. I mean, and you don't blame them, right? Because it's a lot of information to pull. But kind of left us at the Natural Resources Program wondering where to go next. Of course, there's tons of questions left on the table. We've by no means sort of pinned down this species, but there's a lot of different ways you can approach future questions. And particularly in a case like this, where sort of the listing decision timeline is creeping up on us rather quickly, we wanted to ask some questions that would have long-term benefits. So help the SSA to the extent possible and kind of continue to funnel in information to that process, but also support maybe this other branch of sort of our program goals, these voluntary conservation measures. And so here we propose, to study how to better detect this species on the landscape, in its habitat. The goal, simply put, is just to get better at finding them. But I think to define, efficient surveys for the spot tail is going to take a lot of collaboration, a lot of work. So for today's purposes, we really wanted to lay this out for everybody in the audience and kind of field some early reactions, but then more so kind of keep you engaged moving forward. So there's a couple reasons to pursue this study. A couple things I tried to hit on earlier were that, detection remains a big challenge, and it's not even unique to spot tail, right? We're talking about anytime you go out on 500 acres looking for one thing, you're just gonna have a hard time. So anything we can do to kind of make this process more efficient so that those other research questions become a little more accessible. Big question that we're going to all face as this listing decision gains more momentum is, do I have lizards on my property? Well, can we determine that in one survey? Probably not. If we're talking about a boom bust pattern, I can't find any lizards on your property this year, but if the weather's any different, how is that going to change into the next year? And again, just opening up the doors for more research questions. So why do I have lizards but my neighbor doesn't? How does my management for bobwhite quail influence the number of spot tails I have on my property? A lot of questions that we would love to study and continue to unpack, not just for this lizard in the listing decision, but also for that sort of long-term community vision. So, just to kind of give you a rough sketch of how we'd like to move forward, year one is supposed to be pretty tight, pretty small. So taking a pilot study approach, just picking a couple of properties that we know have STEL, and then running all these different survey methods on them. So now the research question has shifted from how many STEL are on this property to which of these methods finds the most STEL, or characterizes the presence of STEL accurately. Just to give you all a taste, there's a lot of different options for looking for these lizards. I know the researchers we've worked with have already tried a wide range of these techniques. And I think, what we're missing going forward is just a comparison and an opening for more people to kind of jump into the conversation. And maybe even bring up, new technology that we haven't applied, like detection dogs are one that, in recent years we're seeing really taking off. This concept that a drug sniffing dog can be trained, or not, any dog, right? But the same sort of premise, the same style of, let's take advantage of a dog's ability to smell the most minute things on the landscape, but train them instead to lizard skin or scat or lizards themselves, and kind of take advantage of, especially in a case of a cryptic species that's hard to find, what a dog might be able to sniff out. And if we can achieve our goal of sort of scaling the work, we hope that we can, kind of build out from a solid base. And this build out would include testing these techniques under a range of field conditions. So different weather, different sort of management styles. I would say, one of my goals for this work is I want to sort of bring people into the conversation so they start to compare notes, start to talk about their survey styles, what works for them, what doesn't. It doesn't do me any good to recommend that we only look for STEL with bucket traps or pitfall traps when the landowner doesn't want their cow walking into a bucket, right? So how we can kind of find a good compromise between what's effective for the science and then what's reasonable for the implementer and the researcher. Another thing I'd like to see from this work is just more communication across different individuals. So a U.S. Fish and Wildlife biologist or a Texas Parks and Wildlife biologist can communicate, can share data with the private consultant, or that data coming out of Nueces County can be compared to data coming out of Jim Wells. With that's kind of how I'd like to pitch this project. I'll share a few more details after the Q&A on what our timeline looks like moving forward. But I think this would be a good time to kind of pass the mic over to Colin. He can talk about where they've taken this scaled approach and sort of what they got out of it. And Colin, you have control, but I can't hear you.
Yes, mute. Hello, thank you, Chelsea. I'm going to provide you all a very short example of how studying survey techniques can improve our understanding of a species and help with the long-term decisions. Before we start, I need to say past results are no guarantee of future performance, but it would be disingenuous for us to say that our study of the Rio Grande cooter, pictured here, has not influenced the decision to look at survey methodologies for STEL. This is Sudanese gorzugi, the Rio Grande cooter. Much like the spot-tailed earless lizard, it decided a long time ago to be a difficult species to study. Similar to the spot-tailed earless lizard, it's really good at hiding and skedaddling whenever something strange happens, like a scientist tries to pick it up. It was recently recognized as a species, and so it received very little attention from researchers until it was petitioned to be listed as an endangered species. The driving questions here were very similar. Is the species really good at hiding and rare? Is it just rare? Is it just really good at hiding? How would we know if the population was declining, growing, or stable? So what we did was we put together a call for proposals and ended up with a contract with the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. The team had very little experience with a cooter, but they put together a diverse team with expertise in traditional turtle survey techniques, working with drones, environmental DNA, and most of all, some graduate students who were willing to slog through the permits, local outreach, and monotonous field work, and they had no problem working along the Rio Grande. So here they are setting traditional traps. They learned to fly, land, and rebuild drones in that order so they could take high resolution photos. They were willing to go everywhere just to look for turtles. Here's Amy at the tailwater of the Amistad Dam. There we go. They've experimented with EG and environmental DNA. Here they are using a vacuum pump from an auto part store to filter a water sample in the field. There we go. Basically, they went everywhere, as you can see that map before, and my poor skills in navigating this slideshow. But from basically the tributary of Independence Creek down to the mouth of the Rio Grande, they went as far as they could to both practice these survey techniques in different conditions and different seasons. Now, that's not something we're going to be able to do with STEL simply because the access is not as easy as just getting to the river. So here we are up at Independence Creek. Here they are down at the southmost preserve, and here is so basically Gorzugi was everywhere. Border Patrol was easy to work with, and the officers, after we got to know them and bump into them in the field, were actually starting to submit photos and sightings to ourselves. Turns out that they spent a lot of time staring at the river, and it was a huge help to know. That actually helped us realize that the Gorzugi was all the way down in Roma, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley, so expanded the range of the species. It's just the slides are not moving down. Chelsea, would you flip to the slide?
That's a wonderful photo.
Thanks. Yeah, that was taken by Drew Davis. So here's an example of what we're able to do with the drones. So flying 30 meters above the river, the turtles did not seem to be spooked and just stayed in place. And so what we're able to do is zoom in and keep going one more. And to this point where we could actually, and I think you go even one more than that. And so on this next slide, we're able to see, yeah. So one's you're able to tell the distinctions between the two turtle species. Another advantage we had on the on the Gorzugi, is that it has these very distinct red webbing between its fingers. This is a slider on the right side, and on the left is a Gorzugi. We're even able to, the images are so clear that we could even get to the point where we could start to identify individuals. And so next slide, please.
You're still in control, Colin.
Oh, you think I am? I don't know. Ruining everything. Okay, so binoculars worked really well. eDNA worked really well. This is images taken from just standing on the riverbanks with a spotting scope and finding the turtles. This is the results from our eDNA surveys. All the yellow is where the orange is where they showed up. It was a nice way because even in sites where we knew the Gorzugi was there, but if the weather conditions were such that they were not showing themselves, eDNA would show that they were there. And so now we've been able to take those tools and we're now applying them to the western chicken turtle in East Texas. This is another species that also recently benefited from some other folks looking at new ways to survey for the species and been able to find them. I swear that wasn't me. I didn't even touch the screen. But and now for our big reveal. So in that we are able to start doing some experimentation with dog. This is a conservation dog named Rainy, and with a mud turtle on it's a different species, but was able to show that dogs can help us find things. So now we're using these. So let me get to this point. So we achieved our goal not because we definitively answered the question of what is the status of the turtle, but because the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley established the tools to effectively and efficiently do so and share them. UT Rio Grande Valley was able to apply these techniques and do an initial survey, but that's only the start. Long-term monitoring will be needed if we ever want to have a firm grasp on the status of the Rio Grande cooter. Also, all of the data from the survey site was made public. The survey techniques are available through our office and Texas Parks and Wildlife, which also has all of the survey data and all of the photos taken by this project. And the idea here is not that we, as the comptroller's office, solve all the questions about the Rio Grande cooter, but we were able to, success for us was producing tools that stakeholders could then use to then address whatever their particular issue were. If you were going to build a bridge or a dam somewhere and wanted to know if there were gorzugi there, we can give you the tools to say, here's how you can definitively do a study to see if they are present. And so now what I'd like to do is turn it over to our distinguished guest, Nathan Rains, no relation to this puppy. And Nathan, I'd like to ask you to share your experiences and trials and tribulations for finding the species and ask you bluntly what you think about this approach that we're taking.
All right. Well, thanks, Colin, Chelsea. Y'all did a really good job of kind of laying out the framework here and what's been done. I just want to give a little maybe historical context or perspective. This species kind of came on our radar probably 10 years ago, maybe. And Andy was here. Andy was around in some of those early discussions. And we kind of knew about this species, but I think maybe what all that came out of, what all happened with the dune sagebrush lizard maybe accelerated our interest a little bit and kind of perked our radar up a little bit on getting ahead of the curve here. So we knew going in, there were really two challenges came out of this. One we knew about. One was trying to survey for species that occurs in a state that's 97% privately owned. We knew that. What we didn't know is just how cryptic and difficult it was to find these little boogers. So we, after some initial discussions, we got out there on the ground, and in most of my experiences in West Texas, not necessarily South Texas, but we'd already been heavily invested out there in with the horned lizard conservation and surveys we were running. So we kind of already had boots on the ground. What we found was they were a lot harder to find than the horned lizards. If you go out to West Texas and you get in the right habitat with native grass and some component of bare ground and brush, you're probably going to find horned lizards. Not all in the same density, but you're going to find some. Not so much with spot tails. And what we found was they were much more unevenly distributed. They seem to be, behaviorally, they're much more wary and cryptic. They don't seem to bask out in the roads quite as much as horned lizards do. They seem to be kind of more temperature dependent. You don't. They seem to have kind of tighter range when they're going to be active. So all those challenges we found. The first year we got out there on a ranch, and one of our biologists was working with, and he knew they had some spot tails. He was familiar with the species. So we got out there, just he and I, and found, probably 10 or 12 the first day. And we thought, well, maybe this isn't so bad. So the next year, we had quite a bit of rainfall, as a side note, but I arranged a meeting for our entire district to come out to this property so I could show them the spot tails, and we couldn't find a darn one. So it just shows you kind of the year-to-year challenges we face with this species. The other thing was we kind of modeled this after our approach that we use for horn lizards. We, our biologists already have relationships with landowners. I'm talking about our county level regulatory biologists, and those relationships are built upon, general habitat management. A lot of times it's built upon deer management, through our deer permit system. So there's already a relationship. There's a trust level between that biologist and that landowner. So that's what we leaned on to get access to these properties and work through those channels. And that worked pretty well for horn lizards because landowners in general are sort of interested in horny toads. But when it came up to spot-tail earless, there's a little bit more hesitation. They didn't know anything about it. Anytime you start throwing out words like candidate or petition, red flags go up. But we're able to work through that to some degree and to get on some of these properties. And that's kind of still where we're at today, working through that. The real interest we have here in what y'all are doing is just to develop some type of survey methodology that's practical, to be quite honest with you. We start getting into things that are theoretical or involve a lot of models. People lose interest real fast. Even our staff, because they don't. They're very time limited. When you start asking too much, it's just you lose interest pretty quickly. So something that's practical, that's easy to roll out would be immensely valuable to not only spot tails, a lot of stuff we do, horn lizards, other kind of conservation projects we got going on. Just something that's simple to do. A whole lot of value. We've come a long way through research, through what UT and A&M have done with, we've kind of gone back and canvassed all the old localities of this lizard. So we've got a kind of an updated modern range delineation. As y'all mentioned, we've kind of done the genetics. We're teasing out which species are which, and all the stuff that Travis has done with the telemetry is, gained just real valuable research. So I think the next step is to just the application part of this. How do we find these lizards on private properties or on, through oil and gas leases, that type of venue? So what's next? How do we find these guys? And I think this has a lot of value in kind of where we go from here. So that's my perspective on it. I'll be glad to, answer any questions about, my experiences with these lizards. Hard to find. They have a nasty habit of being suicidal. They like to hold tight to cover when you're driving roads, and they just can't stand it. And they run right out in front of your vehicle when you're about 10 yards away. So that pattern's held true to a lot of researchers, so it's not just us. But anyway, that's my perspective. I'll be glad to answer any questions y'all have.
Well, thank you, Nathan. And just to hammer it home, do you see a benefit from trying to find new techniques or evaluating existing survey techniques in your daily life?
Yeah, I think testing all these just to find one that's meaningful and kind of doable, for lack of a better word, just something that's easy to roll out for whether it be a landowner, whether it be for our biologist, something that can be done relatively easily, not encumbering too much on the landowner himself. I mean, the more practical you make it, the more data you're going to get. It's kind of as simple as that.
And then, Chelsea, for you, in this project that you envisioned, if you were a private property owner and didn't want to find a super rare species that might get listed on the Endangered Species Act, is there any safeguards you can have in place so that information doesn't get released?
Yeah, so we've got, hold on, you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so we've got like confidentiality protections for landowners, and these are, personal agreements. They're negotiable, so you can kind of fine tune what information can be shared, what should stay like close to the chest. And I hope too that landowners can kind of get on board with just the pivot or the change and sort of the answer to the research question. Let me just prove that my property can, support a interesting and valuable dog survey compared to a physical survey. But when it comes to lizard locations when they're found, that can all be protected. Run and mute as best I can. Well, excellent. Thank you, Nathan. I mean, I think I've had, very few experiences going out and looking for Stell, and I've not been lucky enough to find one. So I appreciate you coming on board and kind of sharing what it's like, what it's like to actually kind of see them on the landscape.
And one of the biggest challenges we've had, not just with spot tails, with any data collection, is this mindset that it's confidentiality. We don't want that information shared. We trying to educate landowners and everyone that the more data we collect, the more lizards we find out there, the better it is for that species. And that's just a hurdle that sometimes we can't get over. That's why we bring up the confidentiality. But we for years we've tried to hammer home that message that the more we can find, the more we can utilize that data, the better it is for everybody. But it's still it's a challenge today, and it probably will be going forward.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and we're excited when it comes to future conservation, kind of what conservation management looks like, or conservation measures, or land management. We hope folks feel more comfortable talking about the management of their property's biodiversity. So, of course, it'll be critical to Stell, but hopefully more folks can open up to a conversation when the point of interest has shifted away from just the Endangered Species Act.
Chelsea, to follow up on that, there's a question in the chat box about, are there any talks about a CCA for Stell? And I was wondering if you could talk about the challenges, and Nathan as well, in that it's my understanding right now, if I came to you and said, okay, I have $1 million and I want to help Stell, we actually don't really have a definitive answer on this is what's good for Stell.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's going to be a process. It would be a long-term project just to kind of build out the requirements that would make a substantial and a defensible CCAA. As hopefully everyone has kind of caught on, the research effort for the species has been going on in earnest. CPA has funded stuff, but then we've also seen like Texas A&M is doing their own work. But all that being said, that's what, 4, 5 years of research now. The species just needs a lot more science before you can manage it fully under CCAA. Now, I should add, with the SSA kicking off and this listing decision kind of becoming more eminent, our capacity as the Natural Resources Program, we're happy to host meetings if folks want to talk about that. This is kind of the original Stell work group meeting. That's how we contacted most of y'all. And that's sort of on the table to open up those discussions, bring Fish and Wildlife Service in for more presentations and kind of more background on those options. But I think that's where the science stands. Kind of my personal opinion.
Can I ask an obnoxious, mostly legal question?
Please.
So we're looking at eDNA in soil for different species, for dune sagebrush lizards. Stell, one of the traditional ways to look for them is to go road cruising. But I'm wondering, somebody mentioned drones. What's the law in Texas about? I see a place that historically has them. Even if I don't see a lizard, I send a drone into somebody's land to take a soil sample to the lab. Is that legal?
No, you can't go onto someone's property and take something from their land.
I'm not going in at all.
Well, your drone is. You can fly now. So, and from the comptroller's side, we've dealt with this issue. Technically, it's legal to fly a drone if you can see it. So I can drive along the side of the road, park my car, fly out a drone over someone's private property, and come back. But as a comptroller's office, we're not going to do that. We are not going to go anywhere near someone's property. I mean, we'll go on the legal roads, but we're not going to fly over someone's road or take anything from their property without talking to them.
There's very good PR reasons to do it that way. I'm just trying to understand the legalities here.
Yeah. I mean, technically it's illegal for someone to shoot down your drone flying over their property, but I don't think that's going to stop them from doing it either.
Yeah.
Just in how we've looked at that. That said, we will fly planes over areas and to get imagery, but yeah, we're not doing it with drones. All right. Just reading this, from Andy Glusenkamp.
Yeah, from Andy. That's an approach we use all the time, whether it be bobwhite quails, spot tails, earless lizards. I mean, a lot of these species cohabit the same type of habitats, and and management benefits them all. So we target our approach to whatever that landowner is interested in. Some are diehard quail hunters, and some are really interested in on-game stuff. But the end game's sort of the same. So we take whatever angle, if you have it, that works, and work towards to the same goal. So that's a pretty common thing we do all the time.
And so Nathan, just to shamelessly toss you another softball question, do you see a benefit, and Andy jumping on this too, where if these tools do work, they might actually be applicable to things other than just the Stell?
Oh, absolutely. So with the horned lizard reintroduction project, and Nathan's involved in other efforts, the first and foremost thing that I discuss with landowners is that it's about habitat management and native biodiversity and maintaining those native ecosystems, or restoring or expanding and improving them, with the caveat that if they're engaged in these processes with the hopes of having horned lizards, they may or may not ever get horned lizards on their ranch, but they're still benefiting tremendously, and along the way, they're doing things that benefit all of us, right? So, it's really encouraging these days to see this phenomenon that I like to call the rise of the non-traditional landowner, where we have more and more people either who went and made their money in the internet or Houston, and they want to buy a piece of landscape, or they have a different life experience and attitudes than their ancestors did, and these large ranches are being bought up for various reasons, other than to try and wring every nickel out of every acre. And historically, that's been the necessity for landowners, and now we have landowners more and more abundant in Texas, who they really want to try and make their property the best, and that's a great opportunity. Neither the traditional landowners nor the non-traditional landowners are going to be pushed into the trailer. You need a carrot.
And it looks like Rachel posed a question earlier that seemed to be along those lines, partnering with landowners that maybe folks are already kind of connected with. I don't know, Rachel, if you want to try to chime in and speak to that.
Hi, sure. Well, I think Nathan really touched on it already. I'm in the diversity program also with Parks and Wildlife, and I was just wondering if there's already an effort to engage those folks who have partnerships through our district biologists already, and what's the buy-in been like from the district staff in your experience?
That's a good question. The first part of that was, did we utilize our district staff? Absolutely. That was how we started. That was step number one in this whole process. It was pretty easy to identify. That was our best way, to access these properties, was to work through that staff. The second part was the buy-in from the staff has been really good. They, a lot of these guys out in the district, guys and gals, they, some of them have an interest in non-game already. Some of them look for something different occasionally from being just inundated with deer stuff year round. So it's kind of a nice break. And they like to be involved with research and just something different. So the buy-in has been pretty tremendous from our staff. Landowner interest has been hit or miss, depends. Even despite some of the best efforts of our staff going out there, but that's definitely the kind of the approach we've used from the very beginning is to work through those staff, and they've been great. They really have. This picture you're seeing now is most of District 4 out there looking for spot tails somewhere out in, I don't know what county that is. It's like Kimball, maybe.
At the same time, just from my own experience, I agree with what Nathan's saying, but at the same time, some of these non-traditional landowners, they're falling through the cracks. I can name 2 or 3, I won't, who I work with on sort of oddball species projects who they're under wildlife management, but their relationship with their biologists is on paper only. And the more we can do to improve that and to sort of steer the course a bit more towards non-game and sort of not typical target species with staff, the better.
So, John Paul, I see you raised your hand here in the sort of the WebEx. Would you like to chime in? Do you have a question? I think I have to unmute you. Oops.
No, sorry, Chelsea. That was simply a mistake. I didn't even know I did that.
Oh, okay. No problem. All right. Well, kind of looking at the clock here, I can sort of ask for the last call for questions right now. And before we jump off the phone, I'll share a little on our timeline. So just the awkward pause if folks have any more questions. Okay. So, moving forward, we really want your feedback. I think you've already seen a little bit of the discourse here today. That's really what we're striving to get, and we're glad so many people tuned in. Moving forward, you're welcome to contact us directly. Just send an email, kind of ask some of these questions. I'd also, kind of appreciate or like to keep y'all involved moving forward. The timeline we're talking about here is, hopefully pending feedback, we can issue a call for proposals in November or, later this fall. This would go on our website. We'd probably kind of blast it through this working group listserv so you can share it with, qualified groups that may be able to apply. That's generally defined as Texas public universities. This will be a competitive process. So folks can tune in with sort of their proposed approach, what they'd like to use. And if we can select a team by spring 21, I'd like to pull the group together again, given any interest, and sort of lay the cards on the table. Who's the team, where they're starting, what they're starting with. So we can kind of continue to get feedback as we move forward. That's pretty much all I've got there, unless there's any questions. Oh, we've got one here. Keep referring to public universities. Are private universities and colleges not allowed to participate? So we need to contract directly with public schools. This is sort of the state contracting process, this like interagency agreement. That being said, our universities are allowed to sort of subcontract. So if they've got talent in other places, they have a lot of, sort of flexibility to bring that in. Watch the mute here. So hopefully that answered your question. All righty. Well, if we don't have any more questions, again, thank you for chiming in. We hope to hear from you. And otherwise, kind of keep an eye out, and hopefully this fall, we'll start moving forward. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, Chelsea.
Thanks, everyone.